Hello and welcome back. This is Colin here.
And I'm Brent Sanders.
And we are two guys buying and building wonderful internet companies.
And it's basically summer is on its way, 2024. We're recording this in the early June. And I don't know about you in Texas, but it is like paradise here in Cleveland, Ohio. It's so nice to have some normal weather outside. It doesn't hurt to go outside anymore.
Yeah, people don't generally call Texas summers paradise. So that doesn't come up quite as often.
I was about to say, how's it by you?
It's getting hot. So people say Austin is perfect weather for 9 months of the year. And then those other 3 months, it's like, I think last summer is over 100 degrees for 40 days in a row. And we're just getting close to that now.
Ugh.
But I don't know. I lived in Minnesota for almost a decade. And the worst of it, you just can't go outside. Like your skin hurts immediately upon going outside. This is nothing like that. I mean, you could still spend most of the day outside around like a body of water in the shade. And it's perfect. So yeah, the neighborhood pools just opened up. The splash pads are open. So we're having a good time here.
Good. Glad to hear. Yeah, same deal here. Just spending a lot of time at the pool. It's funny. It's light out later. School's just let out. So my son, who's still school age, he just finished up school. So every day when I get home, I take the kids right to the pool until 7:30 or so, tire them out. And they're both like little swimmers. It is unbelievable how, for a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, how well they're getting comfortable with going underwater. Definitely advocating if you're out there. My daughter, when she wakes up, she'll say, okay, are we going to the pool now? At like 6:30 in the morning. And so then it's just, no, not now, after work. And she'll go, why? No, they're addicted to it. They love it. And it's such a great, it's such a great way to get energy out.
Awesome. Yeah. We're just getting into it. After you turn like 12 months, the pool becomes like a big hit. So this will be the first big summer with it.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to talk about first here? We haven't done an update in like a month.
Yeah. You went to Capital Camp. Why don't we talk about that?
Nice. Yeah. So this is my second time going. I did a bit of a recap last year, but basically this guy, Brent Beshore and Patrick O'Shaughnessy, and they host this camp. Like it's a conference, but it's supposed to be like a cool conference of sorts. So it's like a bunch of activities and small group discussions for private equity, LPs, and like VCs and exited founders for the most part. But it's cool. Going back for the second time, it's like you're seeing a bunch of the same people. I heard it was 50% returners this year. So it becomes almost like a reunion of sorts. So it's really cool catching up with folks. For us, it's useful to meet these family offices and spend time with them and like build relationships over a period of time. But you kind of start to feel that compounding as you do it year after year. And then I took a bunch of notes.
I'd imagine these types of events are so much better when you're returning. You know what I mean? It's like, it's strange in this world, in like the world of, I guess, investment, to kind of show up for 1 year and not come back, right? It's like, it goes against the whole concept of like, are you actually doing this, or did you just buy a ticket? And I know it's somewhat exclusive, but I think it makes a huge difference to like, hey, nice to see you again. How have things been? What has changed since the last time you spoke? I'm curious to hear like how sentiment has changed and how, maybe less so the topics, but how like the overall landscape feels in contrast to last summer.
It is funny. You could feel like the waves of it for sure. The joke this year was that there were way fewer VCs because they don't have any money anymore. So that came up a few times. But like
nice.
Last year, there were crypto people kind of dropped off. So there's only one guy that even mentioned crypto, and it was like kind of unrelated. They used it, but they don't put it consumer facing. I guess other things that are hot topics is like everyone's trying to figure out AI. So people are using it different ways, some really clever ways around like sourcing and analyzing deals, the difficulty of trying to get your team to use it when the team is concerned they're going to get replaced effectively and people could be more productive. So there's a lot of folks trying to do like hackathons. The funniest one was one guy matches his Oura Ring heart rate data to his meeting schedule and then analyzes like which calls he should discontinue from that.
That's great.
But yeah, so this year it felt a little more like money-making endeavor. Last year, in previous years, it was like more extravagant, like they're really cool events, like you go shooting with Navy SEALs or something. This year's like I play tennis with the Mizzou girls tennis team like every day, basically. because one of the few physical activities that were offered that
Cool.
weren't at like 6 a.m. But it's super fun. And then some of the best talks, they're not really talks, they're like small group discussions. It's like anyone in the room could give an interesting talk, but it's just around topics. So one of the best one was this guy, I think Jeff Sands is his name, and he does like complicated turnarounds. And so he is half the time he goes in and buys the business, half the time he's brought in as a consultant. And it's often these companies with like tremendous amount of debt and like all these different obligations, and he has to reorganize them and like basically beat them down. And so what he does is he does the threat of bankruptcy, and he like holds that over the debt holders to get them to accept a deal. Because apparently otherwise in bankruptcy, the court will effectively right size the debt and they'll just beat it down to whatever the business could reasonably pay. And then some of it just gets thrown out. So he often will get it to be like, look, I'm not going to pay you for like 2 years. And then over the next 2 years, I'm going to pay you 43 cents on the dollar with no interest. And so he has these like amazing value creation situations where seemingly the company was dead and worth nothing.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have a cousin that does like debt restructuring, and it's very interesting to hear her perspective on similar. I mean, it's all turnarounds. It's all companies that are essentially like applying for financing, like bankruptcy financing. Like that's the other option, and they're going to go through debt restructuring. And that's what it kind of seems like. It's, are you willing to go to the brink? Are you willing to go turn your back on the entire thing? Because it's like the underwriting is already done. The funny thing she was saying, and I don't want to attribute it directly because I didn't tell her I was going to talk about it on the podcast or whatever, but she was saying part of what she does when she decides to loan is like really get a sense for the company and the owners that they won't go bankrupt, right? Like that's her number one thing, is making sure that she was talking about doing a deal with like, I don't want to go into the industry, but basically doing a deal and meeting the owners and understanding like their religious beliefs and understanding their ethics as best you can pull that off. And having that be like a major factor in the restructuring deal, like a major factor in her decision making. So the more you learn about this, the more you realize it is a little bit more of like a Wild West, right? It's not so like, well, you owe this and you're going to pay it. It's like when shit hits the fan, it's like, well, we got to figure this thing out, which I never really appreciated the difficulty, or I guess the like what debt providing, like the risk associated with it. Like obviously, yeah, you're loaning a lot of people money and they might not pay you back, but like everybody could not pay you back, right? It's like, so I appreciate the people that can move to their spreadsheet and not have to meet every person they loan to. But yeah, it's a very interesting subject, and it makes a huge impact, especially in B2B SaaS. Like, I mean, any acquisition, like debt, we've talked about it a ton in the past, like debt can turn like an okay outcome growth wise into an amazing outcome if properly leveraged. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Yes. He's a super funny guy, really good storyteller, really optimistic, and he's only ever had to go to court once. So he tries to negotiate this all basically with the threat hanging over everyone's head of like, hey, this is what a judge is going to determine. And would you like to accept this now, or do you want us to like continue down this path? And then I didn't realize there's like, depending on exactly what the debt is called and how it's like instrumented, depends where it falls in the stack of like, for example, wages, they always get paid. Like that's the number one thing. But there's all these different types of like senior secured, junior secured, vendor suit, class action, leaseholder, broken contracts. And this all like kind of falls in a perfect line. And depending on where you are in that line is like, this is the deal you're going to have to accept or you're getting nothing effectively.
Yeah. Have you been following like the FTX sort of call it a turnaround? They put a CEO in place that I think, I could be wrong on this, but I feel like he also took over after Enron, who basically was exposed for their financial issues. But they put a CEO in place and he's trying to, or maybe it's a COO, and he's trying to like deal with debtors. And it's same deal. It's like, hey, this is a company that is embroiled in fraud, or at least the ex-leaders were. And what do you do with the remaining assets? Like there still were some assets there, and there is still a business to be run there. I don't know what's going on with it, but it sounds like very similar sort of real-time process that's going on right now.
Yeah. So I try not to follow crypto or that stuff too much, but my understanding is actually that they made stupid illegal mistakes. But I think that everyone should be made whole just because crypto is so crazy and with the run up and everything. I think it's actually in like their investments in some AI companies. I thought everyone would be made whole because there's like real significant assets there still.
Yeah, they did file bankruptcy if I'm not mistaken. I think they did that a couple of years ago, but or when this all kind of happened. But still, yeah, it's interesting thing that like when the payments stop coming in, then it's like okay, let's figure this out and let's do something reasonable. So that is interesting. I mean, what were some of the strategies that he was saying? Because it's like you can't just be the guy holding the grenade saying I'm going to drop the grenade. Like nobody wants to negotiate with that person. I'm curious how he's able to sort of endear himself with his deal partners in a way that like that's sort of an insinuated, I don't know, like, hey, there's this theoretical grenade that I could be holding that I might drop in the room and we'll blow this whole thing up. It's very delicate, I would imagine, those conversations in order to not lose faith.
I mean, he walks in there. He actually makes it sound super easy. I can't imagine those discussions are as easy as he makes it seem, but he very much is like a mediator of like, he's coming from the outside. It's not his company that got into the situation. So he's like, this is the situation. Let's all look at it realistically and see what the best we could do here is. Or else the alternative is this all gets tied up for years and no one gets paid for indefinitely, effectively.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. What else you learned at Capital Camp?
I would say a lot of people are into debt, into cash flow. VC is very much on the outs. Bootstrapping is in. A lot of people are figuring out like how do you protect your time and say no to things and try to focus more. So it's really funny how some people say no to meetings or emails or like a lot of the ones that are the most, I don't know, popular is the right word, but most sought after, they don't even give reasons. Like they focus on their like core relationships in their core work and they just don't take any outside meetings. They don't reply to any emails. Like they're very much, people don't like have any claim at my attention or my time. So seeing how hardcore some people are about that was interesting. The one other takeaway is like tons of people fly private there and fly private back. And it's like, wow, these people really aren't any different than you or I. And they just have reached this like crazy level of success where they own planes and stuff. I think that's just useful to see up close periodically, meet these people and be like, it's not terribly harder to do this at a 10 times bigger scale. They're no different than anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, so there's more to that though, right? There's got to be more, right? There, I mean, otherwise, is it just luck? It's like those people work as hard as I do and they're just lucky they're right place, right time. Or is there, does success leave clues? And it's like, oh, well, I don't know, right? It's like that. I have had friends that have been in that position and there's usually a reason, right? There's like, oh, like this person's lucky sperm club, or they made an amazing trade that one day and it panned out or something like that, or they made some sacrifice. But yes, they are still people. I don't know. I mean, it's like we're all doing the same things and getting up in the morning for a lot of the same reasons, but they get to fly a lot more comfortably than I do. But yeah, I'm curious if in those environments, it's just sort of a side effect of the industry of like, hey, if you're a capital provider, odds are you've seen your track record is such that $30,000 for a flight from wherever to Missouri is no sweat.
Yeah. It's also great because Columbia, Missouri is a tiny airport. And so I flew out of there both times. And on the way back, it's delayed, of course. It's a tiny airport. And then you just get screwed because it's Memorial Day weekend. And like every subsequent flight is also booked. So there's a huge reason to fly your own plane there for sure. But yeah, most of these people, like the wild successes, for the most part, LPs, either had a successful business or they came from family with money, or the rest of them, for the most part, are just, they started way earlier and then have just scaled up since then.
Yeah.
You do bigger deals and your businesses compound over time. I wouldn't say there's any like wild secrets. The one guy that's like super impressive, Thomas Ince, he was a somewhat successful founder. He's young. I know him. He's in Austin. He's probably like 40 or maybe even less. And he has done 55 acquisitions in the last 5 years as a non-finance guy. He's like a marketing guy. And I think he has 10
Wow.
platforms and like $80 million in EBITDA across all these acquisitions. In his talk, I knew him before, but like him going through the details is like, holy shit, that is a unbelievable pace for a non-finance person to
Yeah.
achieve. So much so it's like, how is this even possible that a non-finance person put this all together to do 55 deals in 5 years and like all independent sponsor style?
Yeah, that's
so
really
every roll up
impressive.
is its own thing.
That's killer. Yeah. Well, those are great stories. I mean, that's kind of thing. If somebody like that's giving a talk and kind of laying down their, just like, how do you see the world? How do you see work? How do you see lifestyle? Like, those are interesting things to try to kind of get that perspective. So that is super cool. So yeah, it sounds like it's almost like Rockstar Camp. You get to go and jam with people that are at a way different level. It's nice. I mean, that's the only way to get better, right? It's like the two things that I've learned, it's like you practice, right? And you mimic and you do what the people that you think are successful, or in whatever realm. Like if you're playing sports, you're picking up styles from people that you see that are pros. And then you eventually keep going, keep putting in reps, keep working, and you will get there, right? Or you'll be a product of the people that you study, roughly. So I don't know. It is encouraging to like hear that it's not, oh, I just did one deal and I was lucky and I blew it out of the water. So just I think as I reflect back on the work that we've done, the stuff that we're definitely starting small, but we're kind of continuing to trend in the right direction of like moving up market, doing larger deals. And you can see it compounding, right? So if like, does that seem like what you observed with some of the other peers there, where it's like they started small, or maybe they started at a certain point, but they continue to grow, and it is that like compounding deal size, compounding scale?
Yeah, 100%. It's almost like you earn the right to play the next game of like people start small,
Mm.
they start an agency or something, or they buy some small business and then they sell it or it compounds and they move to the next thing and the next thing. So yeah, the division at the camp is like some people did that and continue to bootstrap and then, bootstrap their own acquisitions, which is great if you have some like crazy cash flow machine that you could do that. Other ones went the other people's money route and scaled up that way. And they seem to run far ahead over time as they keep scaling up the deal size. Just the leverage of using other people's money and doing bigger and bigger businesses is just so substantial. But yeah, a lot of them, like Andrew Wilkinson was there. He's a perfect example of like at 18 years old, he had a wildly profitable agency, and he did that forever. And so at a pretty young age, he was making like $5 million a year that he could plow into acquisitions. And so that's how, now that he's like 40-ish, he has this like empire, but he has the advantage of doing it for effectively like 20 years at a pretty good scale.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's promising.
I guess one other update over here that's shocking. It's super weird. I told you about it yesterday a little bit. But so I had LASIK 10 years ago, 2014. It's amazing. I was like Superman. I had 20/12 vision, basically like perfect human vision. But that has gotten worse over time. And I started wearing glasses maybe 3+ years ago. And I've gotten a new prescription and I've been wearing glasses and contacts. I was looking at getting LASIK again. So I went and been doing all these dilated eye exams, which kind of knocks me out for a day because if you have really light eyes, you become super sensitive for a way longer period of times. So I basically just have to hide inside and listen to an audiobook. But through that, learned some interesting things yesterday. So I do qualify if I want to do it again. My corneas are thick enough. But what is super weird is I don't have to do it again. So when they paralyze my eyes, they do the whole eye test again, and my vision is effectively perfect in my right eye, and my left eye is like 0.25, which is so low to not even be like a meaningful prescription. And so what has happened was I was given glasses that were too strong, and so my eyes are effectively strained at all times, and I've been looking at screens too much. And so they're like effectively tense, and that is giving me screwed up vision. So it doesn't require an operation.
Whoa.
Yeah. So like when they paralyzed my eyes, it was almost like I had the procedure again and I could see clearly. I drove home with sunglasses on, but without glasses. So yeah, I have to look at screens less. So I have to figure out how to do that. What they recommend is, they call it the 20-20-20 rule. So every 20 minutes, you're supposed to take a break and then look at something over 20 feet away for at least 20 seconds to effectively relax your eyes. So not stare at screens all day.
Oh, wild.
That is my
That
plan.
is interesting.
Yeah. So be careful, I guess, with getting the wrong script or prescription on your glasses, and then you don't stare at screens all the time, or you give yourself
Jeez.
this issue.
Yeah, I feel like people always warn you. People always warn you about that. Like, don't wear glasses when you don't need them. And that's always the thing, man. So what are you going to do?
I have to get so I guess backing up, my eyes used to be bad. It was 4.5, which is a substantial prescription. That was 10 years ago. I got it. It was perfect. And then now my contacts and glasses are like 1.5. It turns out I probably need like 0.75 or less. So I'm just not wearing glasses. I have to get new, much lower prescription glasses. And I don't know, functionally, like I wish I could not stare at a screen, but I also have to do work. So I've just been like, setting a timer on my phone of every 20 minutes, like, hey, put the computer down, go walk outside and look up and down the street.
That's hard to do when you're like deep in work. If you're like in the middle of something, I have a very hard time peeling away. And like, yeah, that's like I do the Pomodoro technique, right? It's like 20 minutes, 5-minute break, 20 minutes, five. It's like a regimented thing. And it's so hard to like, if you're in the midst of something and you have it in your mind, what you're doing and you're focused to like break that state and then go outside because you're in that flow state. But that's a bummer to hear. One thing I'm realizing is I never quite realized, did you rock the rec specs through your basketball career then? Is that what that means?
No, I always had contacts. I knew just a handful of people that ever did that. But yeah, contacts are what most people do. Or a lot of NBA guys do get LASIK.
Nice.
But yeah, contacts otherwise.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's a good update. I mean, I think in terms of what's going on our end, do we want to talk about anything related to portfolio or anything related to new deals? Or just kind of leave those things out for now?
Can't talk about new deals, have exciting updates there down the line. We're happy to share. But I don't know, anything of existing companies you want to talk about?
No, I mean, things are going really well. I'm just trying to think of like interesting subjects around what we're doing. I mean, I think new features are continuing to come out and we've been talking about ways of marketing them. Maybe we'll kind of dedicate a future episode to kind of what that process is like. We were talking about in our meeting earlier this week of like, we've started to kind of branch out Scout, not go away, but like append grooming and boarding and training use cases into the walking app in order to try to get more market share essentially. And so now that we're at the point where, hey, we have these case studies, we have this functionality, we want to figure out, okay, what are the techniques to kind of promote that and go after a new customer base. But that sounds like that might just be more interesting for a future episode.
Yeah, I think we alluded it in the past, but it's like moving up market more so. So we've been doing that with trial customers and, well, I guess probably worthy of its own episode in the future.
Cool. But yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great, wonderful weather summer if you're listening from the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, from the Midwest. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.